Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Gym Owner's Guide to the Galaxy. This podcast is a production of Sweat Angels. Sweat Angels helps gym owners generate friend-to-friend referrals on Facebook. Every month, thousands of affiliate gyms, group fitness clubs, yoga studios, and martial arts schools rely on Sweat Angels to help them grow. To learn more about Sweat Angels, head to causley.com/Sweat Angels. That's causely.com/Sweat Angels, or just search for us on Facebook. Thanks for listening today. I'm John Ruggie.
And I'm Matt Sharp. In today's episode, we'll talk to Steve Kamb, founder and owner of Nerd Fitness and author of a new book coming out this month called Level Up Your Life. Steve created Nerd Fitness in 2009 to give people who are daunted by the idea of getting in shape a better chance at becoming healthy. Today, Nerd Fitness has over 280,000 followers thanks to its unique approach to fitness and nutrition guidance. In this episode, we'll hear the story of how and why Steve created Nerd Fitness. Steve will also share his own advice for gym owners who want to level up their own lives, and he'll explain why having the right brand and building a thriving community is so crucial for any successful fitness business. Without further ado, let's welcome Steve to the show.
Steve, thanks so much for being with us today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, John and Matt. Good to see you guys.
All right, so to kick things off, can you tell us what Nerd Fitness is, who you are, and how you built the business you have today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my name's Steve. I'm a huge nerd, and I like to pick up heavy things occasionally. A few years back, I had this idea after personally spending many years trying to get fit and not having much success. I finally kind of cracked the code and realized that how important diet was and following a proper routine and kind of sticking with it. And I figured there had to be other people out there like myself that didn't have the years to make the mistakes that I did and were just struggling and trying to find a home. And as somebody that proudly described himself as a nerd, I thought there was a cool opportunity for me to help other people like myself that were brand new to health and fitness, that needed some basic advice without the nonsense that most fitness websites bring. And as a nerd, I was like, I think I got it. So I Googled nerd and fitness, and nothing popped up. So I purchased nerdfitness.com and started writing articles that drew inspiration from my favorite comic book characters and video games and movies and books, and combined it with, action steps for people to take to start getting fit, recipes, diet advice, workout plans, and so on. So Nerd Fitness has since become this kind of worldwide community of men and women, young and old, from all over the world that are helping support each other in living healthier lives, losing weight, building muscle, getting stronger, and having a lot of fun along the way.
Well, that's great. I'm curious, what is your definition of nerd? That's kind of one that varies depending on who you ask. So since that's such a core part of your business name, how would you define it for us?
Yeah, the best way I've ever heard nerd described to me was by Will Wheaton, who is currently one of the king nerds out there at the moment. And he said, to me, a nerd is not the definition of a nerd is, it's not what you love, but how you love it. And I thought that was so cool because I think there's so many different definitions, as you said, for what a nerd can be. For me, I consider myself a nerd due to my love of fantasy novels and video games and the amount of sheer volume of reading that I do. For somebody else, it might be you might be a comic book nerd or a med school nerd or a sports stat nerd. I think everybody is a nerd in some way, and I use that term as proudly and endearingly as possible. I think what it really means is like, hey, you really care a lot about something, and you do it to an extent that you might get too excited about it compared to other people. So that to me is what a nerd is. And the important part of Nerd Fitness is that we want you to be healthy, but we don't want you to lose that part of what makes you who you are either. And that's what your favorite nerd things might be, and how to live a life that allows you to be both healthy and love those nerd things.
You don't want people to feel like they have to give up being a nerd in order to become a jock, right?
Exactly. No, I think It's funny. We get a lot of emails from people that say things like, "Hey, man, I love nerd fitness, but I'm not a nerd." And then like we'll email a few times back and forth, and then like by the third or fourth email, they're telling me about like their card collection or that they used to play Magic the Gathering or this other thing. I was like, don't be like embarrassed or ashamed about these. Like, proudly say those things. It's pretty fun to people say like, "Oh, I'm not. I'm really," and then like, "No, you are," and be proud of that and share those things. Like that's part of who you are, and be embrace that.
That's great.
So one of the cool things I think about Nerd Fitness when I first saw it, it just really struck me that like you started it based upon your needs and not necessarily from a prescription of fitness that came before you, right? Like there was no Nerd Fitness. Nobody had connected the love of Star Wars and working out, right? Like no one had done that before. And I love the fact that you were like, hey, I like this. There's probably somebody else out there that's going to like this, and so I'm just going to start doing this, and not really worrying about going into some pre-existing format, right? And I think especially like a lot of the people that we work with and gym owners, like a lot of times we feel like you're stuck in this format, and you might have this idea of, hey, this interests me, but it's never been done before, so I should probably shy away from that. So I love the fact that you kind of broke new ground with this.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a concept out there called it's the blue ocean strategy, and it's this idea that in the ocean, all of these sharks and things are fighting over the same number of fish. So in order for you to be successful, you need to go where the sharks aren't, and find that blue ocean and go explore. So for me with Nerd Fitness, I wasn't trying to go after people that were already interested in fitness and trying to compete with bodybuilding.com and CrossFit.com and compete with these other big sites. And when I started Nerd Fitness now almost 8 years ago, I went where those people weren't. I went to people that were like, I am brand new to fitness. I'm a nerd, and going to a gym scares me. And these websites covered in ads for supplements turn me off. And this other thing is terrifying. And I just want a place that tells me. And so I think Nerd Fitness kind of broke the mold there in that I stopped trying to be. I think the reason we became so successful, or I became so successful, and now it's we as a team, is because we kind of carved our own path and said, hey, like we're not going to try to compete with these other people. We're going to go and create our own little corner of the internet, now really corner of the world, where we get to do the things that we want to do in the way that we want to do them. And that's what makes us stand out.
And I think one of the really interesting things about your story is that you didn't come from maybe a traditional background for starting a business. You were doing construction sales. Is that right? Can you walk us through your life as a construction equipment salesman and the transition into Nerd Fitness Guru?
Yeah. Right out of college. What's funny, my favorite classes in college were entrepreneurship classes. Yeah. They were the thing. I love the idea of building a business. And then the first thing I did out of college was take a giant corporate sales job with a company that sold and rented construction equipment. They gave me a bunch of money and a company car, and I was like, you know what? I guess this will work. This will get the job done. And I very quickly learned that, one, I was very mismatched for that job and that industry, and two, I was awful at sales. I was so bad at it. I love talking to people, but as soon as I have to sell them something, I was like, I'm terrible at it. So it was while working for them on a particularly miserable day that I walked into a bookstore and stumbled across Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek, which had just come out a few months prior to that, I think. And like it was like the sun had like come through the window of the bookstore, and the book was like sitting right there on the on the shelf as I walked in, and I was like, I'm so miserable. This looks like an interesting book idea. And I picked it up and I read the first page in the bookstore, and I took it home. I read it in like, I think, a day and a half. And a big part of the book was picking a social group you're part of and something you're good at, and overlapping those two and carving out your tiny little place that you can become the quote unquote guru for. And for me, that was the nerd community and a slice of the nerd community that was interested in getting started with fitness. It took a few more years after that until I finally took Nerd Fitness full time. But that was really the genesis of it, was picking up Tim's book and realizing that I didn't have to do things the way that everybody else was telling me to do them.
Did you find examples of other programs or businesses that used video game mechanics, use pop culture to the extent that you did, or was that something you just came up with on your own?
I hadn't actually. I mean, it's funny. I think it's a lot more commonplace now, especially with fitness and gamification. Gamification has since risen quite dramatically, and also thanks to Disney acquiring Star Wars and Marvel, like being a nerd is cool now, and being fit like Chris Evans as Captain America, or any of these characters, like it's in to be fit and nerdy. But 8 years ago, I was like, I'm just a nerd that wants to help people, and I play role-playing games my entire life. I've dumped hundreds of hours into games like EverQuest and World of Warcraft and Legend of Zelda. I'm like, why don't I just take this idea and like life is the game and you can be the character? Like that sounds like fun to me. So let's just kind of build that. And now it's a lot more commonplace. When I started, I wasn't aware of anybody else that was doing something like that.
Yeah, and what's cool is that you those are things that you enjoyed. So when you tied those to fitness, it made it much easier for probably people that weren't as into fitness to find a connection there. And that's really like how when he talks about like finding that community and then doing things within that community that help with engagement and retention and those gamification stuff like that. I think that stuff really worked, especially for you, because it works for you. And then when you're in that community and you build those things, it works for people that think like you think. And it's
sure. Well, I was going to say I think something that I didn't try to do. I wish I could say like, oh, this was planned, but I turn a lot of people away from nerd fitness, and I probably turn off quite a few people as well, because we are unabashedly nerdy and love to gamify things and have a very strong Star Wars slant to our branding, and the character creation stuff comes from Lord of the Rings, fantasy, video games. And we have people email us, they're like, hey man, I like the idea of the website, but can you turn down the nerdy stuff? Like, I just want to learn how to do push-ups and eat better. I'm like, no, sorry.
There's other sites for that, right?
Yeah, there's a million other websites out there that do that. And as a result of that, the people that I turn away, I think it makes it it makes it a tighter community of people that do agree with everything else that we're saying. We have a thing on Nerd Fitness called the Rules of the Rebellion. The Rebellion being the name of our community, and it's 10 things that we stand for. And people might go down that list and say like, this isn't me and this doesn't sound right. It's like, great, go find another community. This isn't for you, clearly. Mm-hmm. But when somebody goes down those lists of 10 things and nods their head at each of them, it's like, okay, I'm part of something now. Like, it's not just push-up advice anymore. Like, I'm part of a movement. I'm part of something beyond just me, and that's exciting I think that's exciting for people, especially if they haven't found that home for being able to be themselves about how nerdy they are and being interested in getting fit.
Well, that probably makes it a lot easier for them to connect really quickly too, right? Because then if they've all checked those things off, and now you have some sort of forum, they're going to feel a lot more comfortable talking to people. They're going to a lot more comfortable being vulnerable, because everyone in there is kind of on the same page. And that's what you do when you develop a community. Yeah,
and the other cool thing is, at first I was like, really? And then the more I thought about it, it made a lot of sense. We've had a ton of relationships come out of the Nerd Fitness message board community, and people have met at Camp Nerd Fitness that are still friends or have traveled to visit each other. And people become such fast friends or even start relationships, like you said, Matt, because they get to be 100% themselves, probably for the first time. They might get to be truly nerdy with their nerdy friends and might have to hide that element in public, or feel like they have to hide that element in public. But they come to Nerd Fitness, and not only do they get to do all the nerdy stuff, but they get to geek out about proper eating habits and habit building and behavioral psychology and which exercise plan they're following and things like that. And they get to do all of those things and be 100% themselves, which has allowed us to become like a really tight-knit family almost. I think it's kind of cool to be able to hear people say things like, I feel like I found my new home when they stumble across Nerd Fitness, and that's nothing makes me happier or more proud to be a part of it.
So I think that those 10 rules, that's a great way to kind of filter people coming in. And so I don't want to miss that, because it's really important, especially for gym owners when they're trying to develop a community, is to figure out what are the rules of the tribe? Like what's our personality? What do I stand for? What's the vision? And a lot of times, if you don't establish that stuff, then you end up having kind of this mishmash of people that don't really connect with each other, and it's hard for you to connect with them. And I think those deep relationships come when you have a very clear idea and vision of what you want the community to look like. And a lot of times that's really authentic to what you are. It's why you started. It's the things that you believe. So you don't have to list them all out, but could you walk us through like some of the guidelines for maybe entrance into the
Sure.
gate?
Sure. The first rule is probably the one I'm most proud of, and it's we don't care where you came from, only where you're going. And for many people that join Nerd Fitness, they might be 400 pounds and exercising for the first day, their first time, or they might be, we've had people that are literally like training to be Olympic athletes that read Nerd Fitness. And for each of these people, it's like we need to be united by a common bond here. And it's these other things that make us who we are. So it's, we don't care where you came from, only where you're going. We know you can't outrun your fork. So we let people know that, how important diet is. And for some people, they just want to run for 20 minutes and then go home and drink a Gatorade and eat an entire pizza and say they worked out. We let people know like how important diet is. We say we never leave our wingman, meaning that, if you have a friend or somebody that is trying to get fit, bring them along with you, pull them up, and they might return the favor someday. Say things like fitness can be part of who you are, but not at the expense of who you are. I don't want fitness to take over people's lives. It's funny. People email me and they're like, "Oh man, you got to meet my friend. He or she is a fitness trainer and he works out 7 days a week, and you guys would totally be best buddies, or you guys would really get along." I'm like, probably not actually. Like I go to the gym 4 days a week. I still play plenty of video games. Like fitness is part of me, but it doesn't consume my life. And I think that's really important balance. I think we say fitness should be fun. I mean, the rules are not tremendously polarizing, but I think when you look at the context of all 10 of them, they're written in a very nerdy way with, there's a very strong Rebel Alliance-esque pulled from Star Wars motif running through the site and the community and what we encourage people to say. So it's like, hey, look, if these don't line up with you, that's fine. Or if the articles content turns you off, that's fine too. Then this probably isn't for you. But if you read these things and this article does resonate with you, we welcome you with open arms. We'd love to have you, and we'd love to support you and have you join us. So I think it's similar to kind of like what CrossFit has done so successfully. People say like, how do you know if somebody does CrossFit? Like, don't worry, they'll tell you. I think that's so powerful what CrossFit has done from a community building standpoint. They have their own language. People consider, they're like, oh, it's a cult. It's like, yeah, but if you were in it, like there's nothing more supportive than a group of people that are cheering you on with every workout and speaking the language that you're speaking. And, we've adapted some of that.
It's a tribe.
It's a tribe. And I think Nerd Fitness has been able to succeed at that as well. And CrossFit in the gym space, I think, has done it better than anybody.
Yeah. Can you talk about some of the ways the community has informed Nerd Fitness itself and helped you make it better over the years?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Did you say how it's changed or reformed?
How the community has informed you and the decisions you make on what to add and what to change?
Sure. Well, I think the most common, the most powerful example is back when we started. I said, "Hey, we're a community now," but that doesn't sound nerdy enough to me. What do you guys want to be called? Like, do you guys want to help me build an empire? Which I thought was pretty cool, not thinking Star Wars. I was like, or do you guys want to start a rebellion? And they were like, rebellion for sure, 100%. So when everybody's votes came in on the side of the rebellion, I Googled the Rebel Alliance from Star Wars and saw their color scheme was red, gray, and black. And the Rebel Alliance logo is circular, and the Nerd Fitness logo was circular. So that's kind of how the color scheme and the idea of the rebellion came about, was taking ideas from the community. We have something like 30 or 40 volunteer moderators on our message board that we connect with and learn from, and they let us know kind of how the community is doing. And there's always opportunities. We have events like at camp, and we ask them, this is an in-person event that we have every year. We ask them, what other kind of instructors do you want? What events would you like to see? How else would you like to see us develop? What are some other things that we're missing? And we read every one of those things. We read every email that comes in, and we try to implement as much as we can, while also making sure we're driving the company forward and driving the community forward and evolving and adapting and growing and changing.
Yeah. So I think that's really important to just reiterate the necessity of listening to people and understanding that you're serving them. You probably have a lot of great ideas. I mean, the idea itself came from you initially. So that's really cool to see that you make community listings such an important part of what you do. I also wanted to ask you a little bit about some of the obstacles you faced over the year. Anyone who's started their own business or has helped grow one knows that it's not smooth sailing along the way. So I'm curious to hear about some of the challenges that you faced over time and how you got through them.
Sure. I think the biggest one probably was self-doubt from the beginning. And even today, I still oftentimes feel like, I don't want to say an imposter, but, it's like, geez, all these people are now reading the website and following my advice. Like, who am I? And, but I think that's natural. I've heard that from pretty much anybody that is in a similar space trying to run a business or a company. So, there's a reason why if you go to Nerd Fitness's About page, it says, I am not a fitness expert. I put that right on there in bold and underline, and it's been there since day one. That kind of gave me the confidence to say like, hey, look, I don't have all the answers, but I'm trying my best. I'm constantly learning. All I do, I've dedicated my life to this now for, now 8 years. And I've learned quite a bit and gone from there, but I still don't consider myself an expert. I consider myself a student. However, I think the more pressing and probably applicable obstacle I had to overcome was that I was pretty terrible at creating content and marketing the website for the first 9 months I was running it. I read other fitness websites and were like, oh, don't, every post should only be 250 words because nobody has time to read a long article. And, oh, you don't want to be topical, so people have to come back. So I was publishing 5 articles a week that were relatively short. And it wasn't until I shifted my style to the style that Nerd Fitness has since kind of become known for, but it's 2 very long articles every week with Lego photos full of PubMed backed research, studies, nerdy references, nerdy metaphors and analogies, and going against the grain really was before I tried to emulate the success of everybody else, and as a result, I looked like everybody else and blended into them. Meanwhile, I'm sitting on a website called Nerd Fitness, which is just screaming to be different. And as soon as I made that change and embraced the nerdy aspect of it is what made Nerd Fitness finally turn a corner. Like literally, I think after 9 months of writing, I had less than 100 email subscribers with 5 published articles every week. So like the amount of time invested versus results from it was minimal. And then I finally made that change. And since then, things have, as you can see on the website, things have changed pretty dramatically. Now we have we just passed 280,000 subscribers and we're closing in on 300,000, and that's all been done organically up to this point.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, there's a lesson there too about just getting started as well and not necessarily worrying about the rules. And we had Mike Bledsoe on a couple weeks ago, and he talked about owners shouldn't be afraid to create content, and it doesn't have to be perfect in the beginning, but the only way you're ever going to be good at it or be considered an expert is to go ahead and start doing it. And they run a very successful podcast, the Barbell Shrugged. I think they have like 60, 70,000 subscribers on YouTube alone. But in the beginning, it was terrible, right? It was horrible. And, everybody that has gotten to a certain level, everyone always sees them and they think, oh, they're so lucky. They published a couple of things, and now they have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And they miss out on the fact of the grind for the first year when it was terrible and everything was misspelled and no one was reading it. And the good lesson, I think, in there is just if you're an owner, just start producing stuff and you'll start to figure out what works and you'll start to see what people like because they'll tell you, but not to be afraid to get started.
You have to. You can't edit a blank page, right? And on Nerd Fitness, we use the term embrace the suck. Like regardless of what skill you're trying to learn, be it learning a new instrument, learning how to dance, getting started in the gym, going to your first aerobics class, yoga class, you're gonna look foolish and you're gonna be terrible at it. That is just the nature of it.
Yeah.
So you might as well be terrible immediately and get through that part as quickly as possible. The sooner you start, the sooner you can get through it. So I think it's very similar to creating a gym, if you're marketing the gym. And when you start out, that's the perfect time to try different tactics and techniques. Like I had to write 9 months of kind of generic content to learn that it wasn't working and hone my craft and get better at it. For somebody else, they might realize that how they're marketing their gym or the fact that their gym isn't branded properly. Like you have to look, identify, you said start is the most important, but then it's identifying what is working, pivoting when you need to, trying out different things, and then expanding upon the things that are sticking.
So speaking of taking on challenges, you recently completed a pretty big one. You just wrote a book. It's called Level Up Your Life,
wrote
right?
a book.
So
Yeah.
tell us about it.
It's funny. 9 years ago, I guess now, let's say a decade ago, when I'm just out of college, selling construction equipment. If you told me 10 years later I'd be publishing a book on health and fitness, I wouldn't believe you. Fortunately, I don't have to go back and tell myself that. Instead, I got a chance to write a book that I'm so proud of. It's a book that is grounded in video game mechanics and behavioral psychology, and it helps you do the things that you've said you've always wanted to do, but don't seem to have time for. Whether it's going on an adventure with your kids, learning to play an instrument, writing your first book, learning a language, traveling to your first foreign country. It's a book that kind of tells my story, tells the story of other members of the nerd fitness community, and provides you with a blueprint, kind of step-by-step framework to help you turn yourself into a character, make life a game, and start creating quests and missions for yourself to complete. Like I said, I'm so proud of how it turned out, and I'm hopeful that just like Tim Ferriss's book, was to me now 8 years ago when I walked into a bookstore and saw it, I'm hopeful that this book can be kind of that catalyst, that call to action for somebody else to kickstart their own journey when they walk into a bookstore and see the cover, pick it up, read the first few pages, and get hooked on it too.
That's awesome. So can you give us, let's say, 3 tips that people can learn from reading the book? Not all 30 million, but just 3.
Yeah. I think the most important one that would be kind of screw motivation, cultivate discipline. And for anybody trying to do what they're trying to do, we're always motivated. Oh, starting a new business, it's exciting for that first month. Starting an article is exciting. Starting a workout plan is exciting. But a few weeks later, that excitement, that motivation, willpower, inspiration start to fade. So you need to build systems in your life to make your default behavior that habit you're trying to build. Like I said, if it's writing, I had to get myself to write 500 words every single morning, whether I wanted to or not. For me to exercise, I have it programmed into my workout calendar, into my calendar. I sleep in my workout clothes. So I do all of these things to minimize the steps between me and these habits I'm trying to build. I don't have cable because I knew it would suck the time and energy out of the things I'm trying to do. So instead of giving you 3, that's probably the most important one I could provide you with is that. I'll give you one more, and it's creating small challenges and coming up with small rewards. We love as humans to make progress on things. It's why we get addicted to video games. We love to see that next level, that next character, that next challenge, fight that next boss. So in real life, see if you can find ways to create small challenges and create small rewards for you to show yourself progress too. If it's with your business, maybe it's number of gym memberships that people sign up for, and every time you get past 10 new members, you do something special for your team or people that work with you. If it's a number of online subscribers, doing things along that way. But it's coming up with a system that is structured, shows progress, and helps you get addicted to this idea of I'm improving, I'm making progress, and things like that. Like actually, if you go to levelupyourlife.com, you can actually create a character and create your quest system, add experience point values to it, and actually start leveling up your life as you start crossing off the goals and missions that you find are important.
Very nice.
That's cool.
So when does the book come out again?
January 12th. I'm not sure when this is going to be live, so it might be right now, or if not soon, or previous past. But yeah, January 12th it'll be hitting bookstores and Amazon bookshelves nationwide.
Okay, we'll put a link to that on the blog post associated with this episode. But before we go, one last quick question. Favorite Star Wars character, 3, 2, 1, go.
Obi-Wan.
There it is.
Yeah.
You have a favorite Obi-Wan quote?
Obi-Wan's such a badass. Obi-Wan is the man. I mean, strike me down and I'll become more powerful than you ever could imagine. Like, just, loved him. Obi-Wan was awesome.
Steve, thanks so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Awesome,
and
man.
Best of luck with the book.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. All right, take care.
Thanks again for listening today.
The Gym Owner's Guide to the Galaxy was produced by Matt Sharp, Jeremy Russell, and me, John Ruggie. To make sure you catch every episode, search for The Gym Owner's Guide to the Galaxy on iTunes or wherever you download podcasts. We're always looking for industry leaders to interview on the show, so if there's anyone you'd like to see us feature on a future episode, let us know at podcast@causley.com. That's cause.ly.com.
We are a production of Sweat Angels, the #1 referral program for gym owners. Sweat Angels helps drive new members at your gym by combining Facebook check-ins with giving back. If you haven't heard of us, just go to causley.com/sweatangels or search for us on Facebook. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the Gym Owner's Guide to the Galaxy.